Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene Special Report. Today's date, January 30, 2023. New. This is my third YouTube channel. I have a subscribe button on the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share on YouTube and Rumble. Episode 494. U.S. East and West Coast, Warships, China, and Russia. President Putin to step down in 2023. Some of my sources are God in the Bible, Patriot Subscriber, CRUX, Israeli News Live, Steve Coyle's site, Hal Turner, Eco Collapse Plus. So let's get started. Okay. We begin, and I think it's good to acknowledge that Ukraine is no longer a proxy for NATO. It's all out that Russia is fighting in NATO. So CRUX is a source I've been using recently. And he's talking about NATO, and they're using Starlink, and they're also using NATO aircraft plus drones to supply Ukraine with intel and satellites. Okay. So now in December, we had several strikes inside Russia. And also it's coming out that U.S. Special Forces is operating inside Russia to provide intel and perform acts of sabotage. Okay, so we had this inside Russia, and this happened in December, and we have Ukraine, and we have Crimea. Okay, there were attacks on several bases. One is Ingalls, another one is near Moscow, in this area. And we have intel that these strikes from inside Russia were reportedly U.S. Special Forces are operating there. And Russia has done an analysis. One of the drones, well, several drones came either from Ukraine, or my take on it was we have Russia, we have Mongolia, we have China, we have down here Japan that has 23 U.S. naval bases on it. My take was it was U.S. Special Forces from this area hitting this Ingalls base that is on the other side of Russia, close to Mongolia and China, far away from Ukraine. That didn't seem reasonable. Now, this might be have been one that came from inside Ukraine. So, what the Russian analysis came out with was they had a drone. It was 47 feet long. It's a Tu-141, which is 15 meters. Tu-141. Now, let's be reasonable. Do we think that this size missile could be incoming from any direction and Russia's air defense wouldn't pick up on it? Well, what happened was NATO had combined several aspects to determine what were the weak spots in Russia's air defense. And so they did these attacks. One was December 26th, and yeah, inside Russia. One was December 5, and also December 29. So several attacks inside Russia. Was combined effort with NATO And before each raid, NATO identified Russia's defense, and they used satellites and planes. Now, we have this. So this is one of the bases that was hit here, was 130 kilometers or 81 miles from Ukraine. So that's going on. Yeah. And then we had Ingalls, this one, that's on the other side of Russia, supposedly 814 kilometers or 506 miles from Moscow, which would make it from Ukraine, would make it 860 kilometers or 535 miles. This is not reasonable for this distance from Ukraine to hit here. It's more reasonable that the attack came from this direction. Okay, so NATO surveillance aircraft flew over the Black Sea. It was a U.S. Air Force Global Hawk, which is a remote-controlled aircraft. And they also participated in the attack on Crimea. That was at the Sebastopol port. And that happened in October of 2022. So this has been going on for a while. U.S. and NATO actively participating with remote control drones and satellites and other surveillance techniques. Okay, now Russia has arrested inside Russia several of the saboteurs, which would be U.S. Special Forces. So that's going on. Now, Israeli News Live is bringing this out from the Pentagon. He went to a Pentagon meeting just this weekend, which would be January 28 to 30. And they stated that on the U.S. East and West Coast, we have warships from both China and Russia. So I'll draw you a map. Okay. Now, we have Florida, Texas, Mexico, and over California. So it's been, the information's been coming out that on the West Coast, we do have Chinese warships. And we just heard recently near Bermuda a few days ago that the Russian ship, the Admiral Gorshkov, actually did a practice launch of a nuke onto the United States. And for 34 seconds, they took out satellites, cell phones, internet, plus, all the way into the middle of the U.S. So the U.S. military had their satellites and radar jammed for 34 seconds while this practice was going on. The Russian warship is here. These Chinese warships have yet to be identified. Now, we have Mexico down into Central America. We have Costa Rica right here, going down to South America. Now, I had a Patriot subscriber a few days ago said there's 17,000 CCP vessels right here. A few months ago, we know the president of Venezuela invited in both Russia and China, and they've had submarines and vessels and planes and tens of thousands of troops in South America. So that's going on. And this report is coming out via Stephen Ben-Nun, Israeli News Live. Then he gets this information from the Pentagon. So now, he's saying that Russia's taken their gloves off and they're using hypersonic missiles. They're going to be using them inside Ukraine. And that the Ukraine soldiers are having their food and water rationed. Their supplies are being cut. We have the Washington Examiner giving this information. Yeah, that was about the practice launch by the Admiral Gorshkov in Bermuda a few days ago. And we have that Russia has a super EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon. If that was launched over the U.S., we would have no cell phones, no internet, no power grid. And it's possible that a lot of vehicles wouldn't work. That can travel at Mach 20. And Russia is using an AI to detect certain things inside Ukraine. Okay, China is to take Taiwan by the end of 2023. President Putin will step down by the end of 2023, and we had that prediction I put out a few weeks ago on by Utsava. I said she was from England. She's a seer, but I had a Patriot subscriber said, no, I think she's from Germany. She put that out a few weeks ago that President Putin would be stepping down in 2023, and Stephen Ben-Nun is now getting that same information from the Pentagon. Okay. Now, Stephen's information is that the JB avatar for the deep state is going to commit to Israel, and it's talking about the Juniper Oak drill, joint drill between the U.S. and Israel. I'll go into more detail on that. And he's also talking about the fact that Z recently had one of his interior ministers assassinated. He and his aides took out 9 in a helicopter, also killed 9 on the ground at a daycare center because it was discovered that Z was getting kickbacks, and also the generals in the Ukraine military and other politicians inside Ukraine. So he just had his interior minister and his aides assassinated. Now, Stevens brings out this information. His question was, who is on the black market Ukraine selling their weapons to? And he found out it's to Turkey. So that's going on. Now, we have, so those warships present a clear and present danger. So we'll have to see what's going on with this. Now, I'll bring this information out. So over the weekend, we had another move toward war. This would be Israel and Iran. So I'll draw you a map. We have Russia, we have Georgia, we have Armenia, we have Azerbaijan. It comes down like this, and then we have Iran. Iran's been selling and making drones that Russia's been using. Now, Mike from around the world says that Iran, its underground basis, has a military of 100 million. Okay, so over here we have Turkey, we have Syria, we have Iraq, Saudi Arabia, we have over here Israel, and we have Jordan. Now, just a few days ago, Bibi Netanyahu went to Jordan to have a meeting. And supposedly that was to get the okay for Israel and the U.S. to send to strike through Jordan to Iran with drones. And that happened over the weekend. So during this past week, we had that report from Hal Turner last Sunday. That was about January 21, 22. We had, excuse me, taking off from New York, 7 B-52s. And the B-52s are the strategic bombers for the nuclear bombers for the U.S. Supposedly 3 went to participate in a joint military training called Juniper Oak this past week. And then 4 went to the nuclear bases the U.S. has in Europe. I know one's in Belgium, and I think Netherlands. I think one is in Turkey, and 1 or 2 in Italy. So yeah, so that's going on. And I'll give you a description of the equipment that was used in this joint training, Juniper Oak joint training between the U.S. and Israel. So they had hundreds, tens of thousands of troops. Let's see. Okay, we had 140 planes, B-52, F-35, F-15, F-16, F-18. We had 6,400 U.S. troops. We had 1,100 Israeli troops. We had AC-130 gunships. And we had 46 refuelers. We had 64 attack helicopters. We have MQ-9 drones, combat drones. That's what went into Iran. We have 12 Navy vessels that included a carrier strike group. And we had the capability there to fire HIMARS and multiple launch missiles. And we used 180,000 pounds of ammo. So yeah, that went on. Okay, now we have this. So then, we had an attack in Iran, and that happened like Saturday night. And we also have another source that happened on Saturday and Sunday. And it was drone attacks inside Iran, and they hit multiple locations, including a missile manufacturing location that was making the drones that Russia was using inside Ukraine, and it had an oil refinery. I think the number of deaths I heard so far from the multiple locations is about 20. So yeah, that went on. So now we had a comment by Gonzalo Lira. He's an American Chile journalist living in Ukraine. And he said in Iran, just before one of the explosions, there was something like an earthquake measured at 5.3 near Khoy, K-H-O-Y. Now, Steve Quayle and Bob Griswold are making the statement that on January 28, Russia activated their dead hand system in the past 24 hours. So like January 28. And this is coming out. Azerbaijan. So Azerbaijan is going to repay Israel for Israel's help versus Georgia. So I guess they're helping with the drone attack against Iran. Now, this is interesting. Just before the explosions, the day before Saturday, so that would be on Friday, the Azerbaijan ambassador inside Iran was murdered. So it's speculated that details of this attack on Iran came out, and the involvement of the Azerbaijan nation and their ambassador came out, so he was murdered. So that's going on. So now we have this. So Stephen is saying it was speculated the probability by the AI system the Pentagon uses that Israel would strike Iran after the tanks and planes and other things arrived inside Ukraine. But no, Israel jumped the gun. And also, China is to take Taiwan in 2023. So, now it's believed Iran will retaliate. This will be retaliation against Israel. And the JB avatar for the deep state has said the United States will protect Israel. So that's coming on. So yeah, so they hit inside Iran, an oil refinery, a weapons manufacturing, and it's near the cities of Isfahan, Tabriz, military bases at Hamdan and Karaha and Mahabad. So that's going on. So it's good to stay close to God at this point in time. And what I can say is we ask that God bless America and all nations with peace and prosperity in 2023. I love you, and I'll see you soon.